Okay, I'm here today to explain the type 4 structure. And to type a person core 4, we need to look at each of the components that create a type structure and then put them together. So for type 4, we need to look at the harmonic triad, the Hornevian group, the center of intelligence, and the object relational stance. So 4s are reactive, they are withdrawn, they are an image or heart type, and they are a frustration type. And to start off with the harmonic triads, the harmonic triads tell us how each type deals with conflict or how they handle situations when their needs are not being met and their coping mechanisms. And 4s belong in the reactive triad, along with type 6 and type 8. They're the emotional realness types, so to speak. So the emotionally intense types. They have a desire to create an emotional response in the other person too. And they intuitively react emotional when triggered or under stress. They need to point out the problem. They're also called the negative types, the asshole types. So reactive types are emotionally reactive under stress, and specifically when they're being confronted with issues in their reactive center. So while type 6 will mostly react strongly towards threats in the head center space, like their beliefs, type 8 will mostly react towards the threats of their autonomy or their sense of leverage being undermined. And type 4, as a heart center type, will be reactive mostly and mainly towards external input that gets at their self-image or their sense of self and identity. 4, however, is also a withdrawn type, and all withdrawn types share a preference for the inner world and a continuous retreat from the outside world, and a need to process impressions internally. So how can you be reactive but also withdrawn? And how will reactivity show up in a type that is chronically under-expressing their feelings and their full emotional range and emotional state, and only allow themselves to show a narrow set of emotional states and feelings? So reactive types steep themselves in negativity because this is what's real. And 4s are depth seekers, and they're also frustration addicts. So they have this built-in conviction that anything that isn't negative is shallow. Anything that's just positive or just good can't be real. And this is how all reactive types deal with reality. Something that's real needs to be negative. They have a negative worldview. All reactive types do. And 4s, as image types, will limit themselves to a narrow set of emotional negative moods that seem the most promising of depth and mystery. So you will get a type that is comfortable in expressing negativity, and without the superego added that comes with being a type 6 or a 9 with a 1 wing. There's no moral judgment of anything being wrong to express for a type 4. The reactivity, however, shows up more internal or more subtle. It shows up in being a mood kill, a negative Nancy, in not playing along, and being against, in lots of microfacial expressions of disdain or disgust. So it's pointed, but it's also subtle. And subtlety is something that neither type 6 or type 8 have in their reactivity. The type 6 reactivity shows up in being ready to fight, in standing up for themselves and for their needs and beliefs, and for anything that's wrong, and it's drawing others in to process this in exchange with themselves. So the 6's reactivity needs an ally or needs a bully to go against. It's always pinging off others when they're being reactive. And it riles everyone up. Whereas the type 8 reactivity is assertive, and it's expressed through the body center and taking quick and hot-headed action in unfiltered anger and yes, as I said, assertiveness. So it totally lacks the nuance and the subtlety. It's just the 8 in full charge mode and towards their goal or their boundary infringement. And 4s are more the ones that scoff and sigh in the corner and not saying everything, or saying no to everything, but not saying it all, and being silently judgy. But they are reactive, and when you encounter a type 4, you will see the withdrawn reactivity in lots of facial expressions or subtle comments and pointed bitchy comments. So I'm sorry if I have to sneeze, but I'm super allergic to my cat and she's being super cuddly today. So I might start crying in the middle of this video. Next we have is frustration in the object relational sense. So all frustration types will constantly experience problems related to mostly their dominant instinct. And this is a very agitated state of being, right? It's not a state of defeat or depression. It's seething with discontent. And all frustration types are idealists because they do see, they have this clear vision of how things are supposed to be and how they want them to be and how they should be. And all frustration types act differently to deal with this eternal mismatch of expectation and reality. All frustration types will subconsciously keep this frustration loop that they're being caught in going on for eternity. So even if a goal is reached, it will never be right, it will never be good enough, and they will never be satisfied. They are absolutely insatiable. They will, for example, and this may or may not be taken from personal experience, they will complain that they will never be published as a writer, and then when a window opens up and somebody actually wants to publish them, they will either find a way to talk everything down and only see the lack and just not take the opportunity, or they will, and then they will make everything wrong about it. And yes, they will always recreate this problem of not rightness. I think that frustration really is the fuel to their existence, and it's particularly important for type 4 because I think that it's probably the only component, oh my God, it's probably the only component in the type 4 structure that gets them to achieve anything in the real world, because they're just these poor withdrawn gut blasts that can't really access their body, that can't really participate. So the only thing that drives their motor is this frustration, this idealism, this hopefulness in a way that things could be right, that I could make them right, because frustration is, fuck you, I'm gonna do it myself in the object relational sense. And yeah, for frustration in type 4, I think it also bears an illusion of depth, because being dissatisfied means being aware of all the things that are not there, of the lack, of the problem. And what's there is just superficial or mellowed out, and being happy or content is seen as shallow. This is not to say that 4s can't be happy or frustration types can't be happy, but it's not a state of being I think a 4 would consciously seek. because being happy just sounds dumb. It sounds like being a dumb sheep. Yeah. So to compare with the other frustration types, sevens are cut off from the nurturing function. So they go through life in an eternal quest to seek mommy's tits, to get that nurturing life juice of everything warm and pleasuring. And they are assertive about it, like they are going to get it. And they are self-nurturing. That's what seven is. Fuck you, I'm going to get that juice myself, mom. And ones at the opposite end are cut off from the guidance function. So they become their own ultimate authority. And guidance, and they create rules and order and structure through the gut center by intuitively knowing what's right and then embodying it. They're self-parenting. Fours are double fucked because they're cut off from both the nurturing and the guidance function. And this results in type 4 being just dysfunctional in the real world, and turning inwards because you can't find it outside, because you neither have the nurturing function nor the guidance function that you have an okay relationship with, so you can at least function by doing this. So you can only turn inward and find both this nurturing juice and the structure within yourself. You can't rely on the outside world. So you become self-creating. And that's, by the way, what makes 4 a withdrawn type as well, because all withdrawn types, 4, 5, and 9, are cut off from both parental functions in the object relational sense. So we have, for type 4, we have a reactive type in the harmonic triad, we have a frustrated type in the object relational sense, and we have a withdrawn type that's also an image type. Okay, so 4 is a heart type or image type or emotional type, like 2 and 3. And all heart types have gifts and issues concerning their emotions and concerning their sense of value and identity. So the essential qualities of the heart center involve a connection to your heart and to your heart's intelligence and to your source of feelings and emotional connection with others. And all heart types have an issue of having lost these essential qualities. So they have lost contact with their value, with their identity, and with their emotions. And that's the underlying shame that all heart types have a problem with. A feeling of worthlessness. And to compensate for this feeling of worthlessness or unclear identity, the personality tries to create an image of heart, an image of personality and identity that will overcome these feelings. And the self-image is something curated, and it's not what's actually perceived on a heart level. So it's fake. And all heart types will feel, will have an artificial sense about them. So it also means that heart types will need to be seen how they play or act out their image. And they want to have this image be reflected back at them or through the eyes of their audience, whoever that might be. So it's image is broadcasting your sense of self and identity, and all image types are over-identified with this, and they're overdoing it. Everybody has an image center, but image types do this continuously, minute to minute, even when they're alone, basically. So they want to be the most authentically themselves, but image is always crafted. It's conscious. It's not a state of being or being in the moment, like with gut types who just feel like they are embodying who they are. And image types, in comparison to gut types, will feel more fluid or more flippant. They will feel artificial compared to gut type by overthinking their identity and constantly putting everything that they're perceiving really in relation to their sense of self. So this is what creates a brittleness in all image types that can be felt if you look deeply enough. And yeah, but image is but an image. It's frozen and it's cultivated. And fours are especially chronically disappointed in this conflict of realness, because in having a sense of identity that is being very distinct and very clear internally, and then not being able to put it out authentically, because one, you're withdrawn, you can't really function, you can't really put out what you are experiencing internally, and also everything you put out is being contaminated by reality, so it comes out distorted. And this is how this really crippling and encompassing self-consciousness arises, and that really gets in the way of expressing what's distinctly me, because the four is over editing and over refining, and narrowing down further and further, and really painting themselves into a corner, because they allow themselves to only put out very few things, because they also want to be mysterious, of course. And fours can really get super caught up in this over refining and over editing, to the point that they can barely function as a human being. And all heart center types represent different facets of identity. So 3 is the type that has the most obvious issue around mirroring, because they quite literally are a mirror. They are unable to see themselves, so they need to catch their reflection in the eyes of another to receive what they are looking for, which is validation and admiration, which is also what all heart types are looking for, in a slightly different sense. So type 3 create the substitute for seeing themselves. Fours, however, feel as nothing in the outside world ever reflects or mirrors them correctly in their identity. So 3 can always adjust, because they're an adaptable attachment type, in order to be seen correctly. Because if the audience doesn't perceive what you're doing right now as valuable, you can slightly adjust yourself or just pick another audience, really. And fours are unable to do this, so they turn away from others, because it's like looking in a distorted mirror, in a mirror's cabinet, and all you see is, oh my God, what is this hideous thing that's being reflected back at me? That's not me. How dare you perceive me as such when I put out this other thing? And so 4 needs to turn away from others and parents in the object relational sense, because they are wrong. And the effect this has is, as I just said, I think that they become unadaptable and unable to even fully be themselves in the outside world. It's a constant struggle over this gap between inner and outer life, because there's no grounding in the outside world for a type 4. Everything that's being taken in needs to be molded and fashioned to be distinctly them, And this is through a needle eye, really, because you only allow this very few things to even get in, and what is taken in needs to be molded and needs to be individualized. And then what you put out is even less than what you carry inside. And even this little thing that you put out is then being perceived as wrong. And that's just yeah, that's the doom of being a type 4. It's what makes them so wary of what is being shared and in which context. This taking in just very few things, then over refining these super rare, super few things, and then putting it out and having it distorted and being made shallow or common. And that's just that really is horrible. So this results in the underexpression of emotions. It's unintentional, but not fully intentional. But it's intentional on a subconscious level. It's a conjuring of mystery and depth. It's like a test. It's putting out bait, really, not saying everything and being enigmatic about it, but in a different way that 9 does it, because 9 is doing this on a similar level. 9 is going vague. 9 is going broad. 9 is veiling themselves in obscurity and in being unspecific. So you can't really narrow them down. You can't nail them down. I mean, you can't say, oh, you said this. And even if you do this with a 9, they will be like, no, that was not what I was saying. I was just saying generalized statement. While a 4 is putting out something overly specific and cryptic and not vague, but symbolized. And this is to see if the other person has enough interest to actually go deeper, and also to see if the other person is worthy of finding the essence of what you were just saying. Can you find it? Can you really see it? And do you have enough interest in me to go deeper? And this is also where the overlap of type 4 and sexual self-press comes in, because it's putting out bait, like sexual bait, and then using it for self-penetration. Will you be able to understand? Will you dare to dig and find what I was getting at? Will you be brave enough to put into words what I'm never going to explain to you, and take the risk of being completely wrong and then rejected for it by me? Will you do this? No, you won't. And this is being a withdrawn image type. So now we've looked at the 4 structural components that are the basis of type 4: withdrawn, frustration, image, and reactive. And how does it all come together? A type 4 person will be withdrawn, but expressive, theatrical, but withholding, self-absorbed and at home with their negativity and darker facets of the personality and their life. A type 4 will also be perceived as more negative and cynical from the outside, as they perceive themselves, because they don't split feelings into good and bad, or black and white, or positive and negative. And they also don't have any superego component in their core type structure, holding them back from expressing what might otherwise be registered as too sinister or too much. So most types live on the earth. If you look at the Enneagram structure, how it's built up, type 4 and type 5 are under the surface in the abyss. And if you ask a grotto ohm about his experience, he won't reply with, well, it's quite dark in here in my cave. Because a grotto ohm doesn't even have eyes, or it does have eyes, but whatever, you get the reference. because they just don't know anything but their surroundings, as all types just don't know anything but their subjective experience. So people who mistype as fours, however, will perceive their darkness as blacker and more encompassing and more and larger than it actually is, because that's a conscious and judgmental observation. Fours are also inherently self-referencing, so your opinion and experience won't mean shit to them. They're self-creating, and this means they will be immune to most advice or inspiration from the outside. They won't seek it out, and when confronted with it, they won't let themselves be penetrated by it. And this is not to be conflated with a six's counterphobia, and when they feel their mind is being infiltrated, or a nine's desire for autonomy when they're being pushed. They will just naturally do things their own way, or they just won't do it. Fours don't participate much at all in a greater scheme. And if they're structured, which they can be, or can learn to be, to have some structure, it's a self-righteous and intrinsical structure that applies to the things they do and isn't applicable to a greater system. If type 4 feels comfortable at all in a social setting, it is only when their self-assigned role ideal of being a mysterious outsider is being recognized. And if you don't expect them to anything else but this. And with that also comes a great deal of entitlement, which is something they share with their frustration neighbors. Frustration types all have whiny baby energy. I'm going to get this, I deserve this, and I'm going to get it. And common rules shouldn't and won't apply to them. Like, they will find their way, they will go for it, or they will expect others to cater to them in the fourish, withdrawn way. So something about creativity in four, because fours are always known to be the creative type. And I think that's not true, because it neglects the structural dysfunctionality that fours have, who just have a hard time actualizing anything, and the image refinement that restricts them to such a narrow set of self-expression. Nines, as synthesizing philosopher types, are far more creative in the sense that they are interweaving everything that inspires them and create a whole. And sevens, in their restlessness and insatiability and in their assertiveness, just achieve 10 things, while the four is still chewing on what they could even allow themselves to present and be connected to. But it is true that fours will have a personalized style that totally lacks variety and spontaneity. Like, it's a broken jukebox in the corner that just plays this one song over and over again that nobody knows and nobody wants to dance to. Yeah, but they will find indirect and artistic ways to express themselves. So, what are fours? Fours are the ones you always picked last in high school sports, and I guarantee you this generalized statement. I'm pretty sure that's like a known fact about all fours. And the ones that make you uncomfortable and that get prissy about a lighthearted statement, and really fucking hostile when you, as someone they regard as shallow, dare to relate to their unique suffering. And they're the ones that cannot be motivated for the life of it when you try to get them to participate in something. They're the ones that are delicate and picky and bitchy and insufferable and morose, and sometimes make up for it because they can have some stage value when they're being so dramatic, standing on their own foot in the corner all day. And I could sum this up more neatly for you right now, but I hate repetition. And I'm not a synthesizer, so I recommend you check out Rachel's video of a 648 wanting to be typed as 4. And if after all this you still think that type 4 is more interesting or deep than any other type, then please go back to your church group and your sexual social aid husband and read Chestnut with them, because you're beyond salvation.